Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Grants and Contracts. I am your co host, Lainey.
And this is Abraham. It's good to see all of you joining us live. If you are hanging out with us here today, we have a special guest. We're going to introduce you to him in a second. He's has been part of millions and millions and millions of dollars in government contracting awards. And so we will introduce him in a second. But it's just good to see all of you hanging out with us on the Grants and Contracting podcast.
Yes, if you're joining us, today or watching playback, make sure to leave, your name, where you're joining us from. If you have a company that we love to see where everybody's joining from. I am joining today from North Georgia. Abe is in Atlanta, and then our special guest is actually joining in from Denver. So that's really exciting. And I know we'll have some different people kind of all over the nation and the world that will be popping in. So we'd love to see those locations. So, Abe, tell us a little bit about this special guest before we introduce him.
Yeah, well, Joe and I got a chance to chat a little bit about a company that we were helping, a member of GCA that we were helping previously. And so one of our team members here at GCA said, hey, you know what? Why don't we have Joe come and be a guest? Because he's been in the government market for 3 decades. And so some of you've been in the government market for 3 months, and so there's a lot to learn from what Joe has to share. And so, without holding anything back, I want to go ahead and introduce Joe Boglino, who is with Netnync. And so, Joe, go ahead and chime in and tell us a little bit about you and how you got started in the government market.
Well, good day, everyone. 30 years under your belt really represents being bloodied, battered, and bruised. I like to tell people that I look like Brad Pitt when I first got into the business, and now this is what they get. So it's a engaging, gnarly, unknown profession out there that I guess I've had the pleasure of learning a lot about business and learning a lot about myself and the profession by going through probably more losses than wins. And I suspect it's one of those things that has taught me that so important in life is that you've got to learn to lose. And the sooner you learn to lose, the better you can handle losing and venturing out and going out and pursuing whatever you want to pursue, because I think the fear of losing will keep you from doing anything. And government contracting will teach you that, because that's pretty straightforward. You either win and have a great contract that can support a company and people and employ people and grow a business, or you can lose after a 36-month joust with the RFP and getting it in. And yes, you do learn more from your losses. Unfortunately, I wish you could learn a lot more from your wins, but I suspect that I'm better for the experience, and happy to contribute to whatever I can here to your listeners to give them any sort of insight on things to do or watch for, etc.
So tell us a little bit about, in all the years that you've been in the government space here, tell us about the total contract awards that you've been part of, whether you've been a teaming partner or you've been responsible for in terms of the capture or the proposal. Just kind of give our audience a little bit of the experience, total contract value, because really that's what they want to know. How much dollars have you been a part of? Just a rough estimate.
Well, I mean, these contracts are all IT, hardware, software opportunities, and I think I've participated in every one that I can that's come across my nose. Um, the values of these things are, 5 and 10 years, billion-dollar contracts. I suppose that the net revenue has certainly been in the hundreds of millions, based on what we've been able to produce. So whether it's been SEWP or NIH or any other agency BPA, I've been engaged there. They're all different, even though they follow the same alphabet structure. There's always some wrinkle, and so it's been an immersion, and I've learned the hard way. I wasn't formally trained in APMP and didn't go to proposal capture or the Shipley bid writing school. I literally just go failing miserably because there is a really unique approach to this business that you must adhere to, and I didn't know that at the time. So, I suspect it's been hundreds of millions of dollars and quite a few different agencies that I've engaged over my career.
So you've been involved in billions of contract awards in terms of IDIQ and total awards, but in terms of revenue, hundreds of millions in terms of revenue. So you've seen a lot of changes over
Yeah,
the last
that's
few decades.
accurate.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and talk about what are some of the early days and how things have changed over the landscape to currently what it is now.
Yeah, and before I think too, this was a question I had, so it's kind of a 2-for-1 question of who introduced you to government contracting, because I always think that's an interesting one. So who introduced you, and then kind of those early days, what it was like compared to now, because the landscape is so different now.
Well, I kind of fell into this business. I was a former Peace Corps volunteer that was stationed 6 miles from the Ukrainian border back in 92 to 94. So this was right after the wall fell, and all I wanted to do was write books, hug trees, and change the world, as most young people do. And I got into IT sales with the company, and really had to hustle because there was no bid capture, bid writer. I would just see an opportunity. I thought, well, let me go for it. And I really hate what's happening to government contracting based on what I'm accustomed to. But really, my first big effort was the SEWP3 contract back in 2000. And I only won that by the grace of God, I think. I thought it was the best thing I had ever produced. But quite frankly, I didn't even sign the SF 1449. Didn't know I had to. But the SEWP program office was gracious enough to give me an amendment and let me sign it, because that's a kill pill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it really did start with just it was a single person effort. I would try to recruit people that I worked with to do the pricing, and I would write it. I felt like, wow, I wanted to write books. I wanted to write these things, and this is where my career is. I'm going to write proposals. So, I guess that turned out to be not a bad career. You can write proposals and make a living. But, the nature of government contracting now, and really, I don't know if there's anyone at fault of what it's become. Greed is part of it. I've seen some really ugliness out there, and I feel like, in a sense, the government did set up the rules of play, but the vendors out there that are supporting it have decided to modify those rules to their best interest. And I think that in the IT industry, it's become cannibalistic. Companies will do whatever it takes to win. There used to be, and this is again I'm not a book smart proposal writer here or a capture guy. It used to be that you would start with a market research RFI, then you'd go into an RFP, go through the effort and submit. Then you'd win or lose. If you lost, you got a debrief and you learned from it and you moved on. Now you protest. And it doesn't matter whether you have merit or not, you protest. And I think the government is under siege, but I also think they put up really lousy requirements that make companies protest. And that's why you're seeing a real strong mandate toward ISO certifications and CMMI certifications that the government can use as an objective black and white determination to eliminate you or to approve you. But the fact that this is occurring, it's taking these contracts forever to get competed, forever to get evaluated, forever to get reviewed and awarded, and then forever to get through the protest cycle. And so in some cases, the government has thrown up their hands and said, well, okay, we'll just award to everybody, and eliminated the value of all these contracts. Many GSA contracts are awarded to hundreds of vendors, rendering them useless. The SEWP contract and its evolution, when I was awarded one of 19 spots on that contract in 2003, it was something to have, and I could build a business around it. Well, SEWP 5, they awarded to over 150. That's because they got protested. And that contract is a bloodbath now. It's a commoditization, and you have to go for it, but in my mind, it's worthless. it's completely worthless because of all the contractors that are on there. So I'm not too pleased with the state of what's happened with the level of protest. Lawyers are making millions on all this, and companies are protesting really stupid stuff. But you have to, because you want to stay relevant. You're going to lose that contract, 10-year opportunity to build your business, so you might as well throw whatever you can at it. And so that's a long answer, but I really don't love it. You are more apt to being eliminated by a technicality than the merit of your operation. So you spend years in crafting your technical approach, your corporate capabilities, your past performance. But if you didn't sign that SF 1449 now, or you didn't have the right margins or the right font, or you just accidentally omitted one item in a very, very large spreadsheet, you're done. And it's really, really upsetting. The government is going to eliminate you because they can, and they're not going to be subjected to protest. But they're screwing themselves because they're not evaluating. They're taking a ticky-tacky technicality, eliminating you without looking at the merits of your operation. So you can say that not too pleased with everything moving to GSA, by the way. There's a reason why all these IDIQs and GWACs came out, because GSA couldn't do the job. And I'm sorry, but GSA is still a very stodgy 1950s run operation. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but going to GSA, they're going to have these large GWACs to be awarded to thousands of vendors. Just tell me how valuable are those contracts going to be when you have thousands of competitors on those contracts? So I guess you can tell I got a pretty strong opinion on it, but that's how I've experienced it over the last 30 years in the evolution of government contracting.
Well, that's good perspective, right? Because you bring in decades of perspective into this industry here. Some of you who are new in the government market, you're like, oh, wow, should I get into the government market now or should I wait? I do appreciate Joe's perspective, but on the flip side to that, it is in the middle of chaos where you get a chance to innovate and you get a chance to find the opportunity. So yes, we are going through some changes, and changes, there's what Joe is talking about, right? Changes happens, and there are a lot of things that you have to adjust to. And sometimes changes are good, sometimes changes are bad, but regardless of the pros and cons to it, you as an organization, just like Joe, he's adapting in this market. Why? Because his company that he's a part of, they have to adjust in this changing landscape so that they can continue to thrive and continue to grow. So let's talk about, that's one side to it, Joe. What are some things that you guys are doing to adapt to all these changes to continue to survive?
Yeah, so there's been a big movement for companies to hire outside companies to write RFPs. When that really became a thing 15 years ago or so, I thought that was a pretty cheap way of a company to win an RFP. You need to win on your own merit, but these things are too valuable. And so having a third party company write the proposal really, I guess, is warranted. So what I've had to do, and I call it the fishbowl syndrome. And this exists in every division, department, process that's out there. A proposal, in my mind, represents the fishbowl, and you have a team that does it. And without having any outside perspective to give you context of what you've done and what you've written, because what you've written and what you've interpreted could be completely wrong unless you have an outside fish that's plopped into your fishbowl and can swim around and tell you if you're swimming in clean or poopy water. So, a best practice really is, okay, you've got to have.
Oh no, we've momentarily lost Joe.
Yep. But let me chime in on what Joe is sharing there in terms of the fishbowl theory that he's talking about. So as a fish that's in a bowl, you're limited to what you can see. You're not in the wide open ocean where you can see everything and you can go everywhere you want to. As a fish, you're limited to what you can do there. And then as the market starts to change by bringing in outside proposal resources, there are like some proposal shops that they specialize in writing the NASA SEWP proposal itself. And so yes, they're writing for 20 other companies, but now they can actually specialize in writing for that one opportunity, and they're going to do a better job at it than you would do on your own, because they've studied they've tracked that big IDIQ contract, big GWAC contract. They plan for it. They've looked at the landscape around it. They understand all the different components, all the different moving pieces. So by allowing a third party to write, sometimes that's more meaningful for you as an organization versus you just trying to do it on your own. And I think that's part of what Joe was talking about, is that, yes, sometimes you don't want outside people to do it, but in some situation, an outside party will be more effective in helping you to get that big IDIQ contract.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm kind of bringing in the grant side of things that I do know. I mean, there's certain grants that I would say I specialize in, and those grants are, I've been able to talk with the people putting out those grants after each year grant, what was done good, what was done bad, not with my writing, but as an overall thing. So I would imagine that these people are coming in from, not necessarily they're on the inside, but they're having some sort of insight. And like you said, they're experts at that specific grant. So there is at this specific contract, I'm sorry, because that's what they specialize in, kind of when I specialize in certain grants that I write. So I think that's really an interesting perspective on the contracting side.
All right, Joe, it's good to have you back. So let's shift gears a little bit. Tell us about the company that you're with and what type of product services that you guys offer.
Yeah, so let me throw one more thing out there if I can first regarding competition and that kind of thing, okay?
Sure.
Because I think this is important. I had a meeting with an Air Force contracting officer many years ago, and she was disappointed by the amount of responses that she was getting. And I asked her name was Evelyn. I said, Evelyn, so tell me about what you're trying to do. Well, I'm sending out this RFP to everybody that I know, every contact that I know that can do the business. She wants to facilitate fair competition, and she's hoping that she can get a response. What I told her was that, well, you have to understand there's people on the other side of that request. And when a inside rep gets a RFP and he knows it's been full and open, or it's been sent out to dozens of other companies, their likelihood and the probability of winning are low, so they're not going to respond. And so I told her, I said, just take me up on this and try to set it out to 3 and see what you get. And she called me back 2 months later after that conversation in New Orleans at a SEWP conference, and tells me that she gets 3 responses every single time. So more is not always better, by the way. And as I mentioned around awarding all these contracts to all these vendors, it doesn't give you a higher ability to get a response, by the way. So just my 2 cents on that. So Netnync, who I'm with now, is a IT solution provider in the public sector space. They produce near 1,000 RFP responses every year. If you're going to be in the public sector, you've got to mechanize your operation to respond to RFPs and RFQs. A majority of those are in the state, local, and education space, and I was brought on a number of years ago to help leverage what they do in the federal space, or in the SLED space, into the federal space. So that's what I've been doing since about 2018, and we actively look for partners. I don't think that you can do business in the federal space without a partnership, because most scopes represent a square hole and you have a rectangular peg to fill, and it always requires a partner. So companies that don't embrace partnerships, I really feel are at risk, and because you can't do everything. I know that a lot of owners, I would highly encourage any company that's out there in the Fed space, look for an ecosystem that supports you and that you can support to help drive your your business development goals out there.
I agree with you. In the federal market, 70% of federal project requires 2 or more companies to work or to perform on it. And so if you don't have teaming partners, subcontractors, other, whether it's a mentor project partnership or joint venture setup, or just a teaming relationship, subcontractor partnership relationship, you're not going to achieve the level of success that you want. So that's a very important topic that you share there, Joe, with our audience here and our listener. Now, how do you go about establishing some of those partners or teaming partners there?
For me, it's a very human, initiative. I have to really like the people I want to work with, that they're coming from the same perspective that I am, that money is not driving them. Yes, the business is important and growing, but if you do good work, the money will come. And I've met so many companies that I just will never work with again, just because of their motivations. To me, are not, in a sense, promoting team and promoting customer first. So I think I'm an anomaly, to be honest with you. But what I'm saying is not going to be surprising, and I think most people will shake their head yes. But I've got to work with people and companies that are absolutely honest and have the right motivation. So when I do an evaluation of an organization, I may look at their capabilities and I may look at their past performance, because there's 2 questions in government contracting that you ask yourself when it comes to every RFP. Now I'm making it super simple, but we're on a podcast. I'm not in a university here teaching anything here. 1, can you do it? Simple as that. 2, can you prove it? And that's always the hiccup. Can you prove it? And then do you have all the credentials that support it? So when I look at companies out there, I'll look at that. Can they do it? Do they have an ability that they show on their capability statement that, yes, this is what we do? Most of the capability statements that I read are garbage. They're filled with what? They don't demonstrate anything. I can't really tell what people do. So it fosters a conversation that says, give me a story about the projects that you've done that demonstrate what you show on your capability statement. Once I've got that, then I've got to really understand, okay, do I like these guys? Do they have a good reputation? Are they people first company? Or are they, hey, I got a quota, I got to drive and get this deal, or I'm going to lose my job or lose my business? That's how I work. I think it's going to be quite different for a lot of others, but that's just what I've crafted over, the 30 years here.
Yeah, so are you finding maybe this honesty and the things that you're looking for, you're finding that from the larger businesses, or when you're looking at this, you're seeing a lot of, maybe what you would consider smaller businesses that are having these ideals?
I think smaller businesses don't care. I think they're filling their subcontracting plan and they don't care. I've been a part of many large business teaming wins, and I've not garnered $1. The smaller businesses where I have partnered and worked with has worked out great. So yes, I apply it there, and I find that I can work with these folks, and we can drive mutual business, and we're at the same page. Netnync is unique because most of the revenue-based NACIS codes make us big. All the employee-based NACIS codes make us small. So we're in a unique environment there. But I don't feel that the Raytheons and Lockheeds and all those guys, I mean, they've got to feed the monster, and you're just a tick on their woman-owned or their Native American-owned or your service disabled. That's my feeling. I'm sure I'll offend somebody on that, but that's what I've experienced. And, it's very difficult to evaluate a large company like that based on being human.
Yeah.
So I can't really apply that same methodology.
A lot of our students and then a lot of people that are joining, they are smaller business. Maybe they're just starting in the government space. And so that's one thing we teach is partnering. So partnering, in any way that they can. But I was just interested in that.
Well, listen, let me tell you one thing. If we're talking about people getting in the business, the most important thing you can do is build your network. And you may be an introvert and you may feel very, very uncomfortable in just the thought of that, but challenge yourself and build your network. Because when people get to know you, people begin to support you and they can help you through whatever, and you can find these deals. I spent a ton of my time networking, much more than I did earlier in my career, and I wish I'd have learned that a long time ago. And a lot of proposal development writers and that kind of stuff, they're not necessarily these gregarious people that own or the life of the party. You don't have to be, but I would highly encourage everybody who's going to get into this business that, okay, craft your skills around what government RFPs require, and then go find a network. Go get some friends. Super important.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something we teach a lot too, is networking. Do you have a specific networking idea besides just, the regular networking that you would like to share with the audience? Like maybe a networking hack you have?
Well, it's a commitment. That's really the hack. Most
Yeah.
people, when they're posed with doing something that may not be natural to themselves, and a proposal writer, a bid capture may be different, but that activity is not in the job description of anything that you look at. When you're applying for positions at XYZ for this type of role, it never says networking. So you just have to spend, a half hour a week. I'm going to make some phone calls to like-minded companies and talk to like-minded people like me in my position and just ask them about their experience. If you ask anybody the word and you use the word advice, which in my mind is the most powerful word in the English language, you bestow great honor upon the person you just asked that of. And if you just ask them, hey, can you give me some advice? How did you find this RFP? Or how did you find, what do you find is the best way to do X, Y, Z? You'll get an answer. And I think you just have to lead with questions, lead with being a curious George, and you can build your network. It isn't that hard. It isn't as hard as you might think it is.
I love that advice. That was great.
Yep, ask for advice, and you will get a lot of help from people. So with that, Joe, you lived multiple lives in terms of all your decades before government contracting and government contracting, and the relationships and the different people that you have encountered over the years. And you kind of put that into a book where your book is called Everyone Has a Story. Can you tell us a little about your book and what's in it, and
Yeah.
what value people can get from your book?
So I have 4 books out there. This is one book that is a representation of being dealt some pretty gnarly cards where I had to pivot. The stories in this book are all from my Uber career. So I got to a point in my professional life that I was not allowed to work for certain reasons. And I decided, well, I have to do something. Decided to jump in an Uber, and I drove for about 3 or 4 months and met the most fascinating people. And I always felt like if I ever managed salespeople again, I would force them to drive for Uber and Lyft, because you're exposed to people that you'd never meet in a million years. So this was one book that was written in 2018. I've also written a book called Quit Your Job Before It Ruins You, because I held too tight to comfort and stayed in my place, and I've tried to offer kind of a story about how you can do that without crushing your soul. And then the most recent book that I've written is That's Fucked Up, That's Not Right. And it's a compilation of about 80 or so things that happen in this world that are not right. It doesn't offer any advice, but it just sheds some light on some things that are pretty messed up. For example, confidence. We're all fighting with confidence. Why? Wouldn't it be amazing if we were just born with natural confidence? Can you imagine what kind of world we live in? So it's those type of topics that book touches upon. So I try to, after writing, and I guess for everybody that might be listening, I think it's important to write your own stuff. Writing RFPs can be super dry, super technical, and these are my outlets to exercise my creativity, or at least try to. Don't know how creative I am, but it does keep me sane to be able to take on topics that aren't necessarily, corporate capabilities and that kind of thing.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I know we have a hard stop in a few minutes here, but so 2 quick things here before we wrap up. If you have to give a tip or an advice to anybody who's listening to this here, and before we wrap up here, what would be a key advice you want to give to people?
Well, learn to lose. Get really comfortable with losing, because if you can, then you'll continue to try. And it's important to continue to try. A lot of people don't try because they feel like, well, my probability of winning is low. So do that. Be good to yourself, because you need to be the captain or the president of your own fan club. There's enough scrutinizers out there that you don't need to be your own. So just embrace belief and be patient. When you're learning something like government contracting and RFPs, it is brutal. The learning curve is about as steep as anything that you can climb. But just have patience. It'll come. Every bid you do will teach you a lesson that you need to take stock in and use it for the next effort. So pretty simple equation that I hope I live by. I'm sure I'm a hypocrite, but those are the things I could give you.
Great tips and great advice there. Last comment. What type of teaming partners are you currently looking for? What are some areas that you're looking for to fill the gaps of what you guys are doing at Netnync?
Yeah, so there's a horse trade that goes on there. So we're always looking for capabilities that are outside of our own. So if they look at our website and see what we don't do, call me, because you're going to make me relevant in areas that I can't pursue. And maybe my capabilities, because they don't have them, will make them relevant. Businesses that have processes in place and they can prove it with badges like ISO and CMMI are very, very impressive to me. It shows that they've been in the business for years and they've gone through processes where they've had to establish some things. So it's as simple as that. Just look at the gaps and go fill them. And then if you have those badges that you can wear on your capability statement around those things that I mentioned, those are really great credibility builders.
Awesome. Well, we're going to put Joe's contact information in the description area. And so you guys will have access to that there. You can go to netsync.com, netsync.com. We'll also put Joe's links to his email as well as his books. If you guys are wanting to check out his books, learn from what his life experience have been. If you're interested in being a teaming partner, reach out to Joe. But do what he suggested, right? Don't just reach out to him. Go to their site, study what they do, find how you can be a valuable partner to them, and then engage him from that perspective. Don't just say, hey, I'm here, a small business. Can we do some work together? Give the reason why you should work together with Joe and his company. So with that, any final comments, Joe, before we wrap up?
No, thanks for the stage on this, guys. I appreciate the work you're doing, and I hope that I've brought some value to your audience.
Well, we appreciate having you. And for all of you joining us, thank you for hanging out with us live. And for those watching on replay, thanks for being part of our social community. And with that, we will see you next week. Lainey, you have a few closing comments you want to give everybody? We got some giveaways and we got some closing comments here.
Yes. So we have our podcast next week, which I'm going to drop the link in. We're reviewing Trump's first 7 months. So we've had some news, some breaking news. As always, I feel like there's always something when we're talking about administration stuff, but just reviewing contracts, changes in contracts really is what we're reviewing, and what's happened over the 7 months. We've done a couple of different reviews, so we want to bring this in. I'm going to drop that link in the chat, and then we actually have a coupon for the GovCon space. So that is what I'm going to drop in as well.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's been fun hanging out with all of you. Joe, we appreciate you joining us in this podcast here. There's lots of nuggets that Joe have shared, lots of great advice. And with that, we will see all of you, because you are one contract.
And you are one grant away from all your dreams, from all your success, from, the life that you want to live.
Take care, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.